Okay, we now have a source saying that there are two high-profile PGA Tour players who had previously been given very big offers from LIV who are now regretting their decision of turning that down and coming back, beating the door down for a chance to get onto LIV. And we got to kind of dive in and find out, is this just the rumor mill? Is this just effectively just trying to stir the pot and maybe increase the overall awareness of LIV, or could it very well be that players are starting to realize that this deal doesn't seem to be going anywhere and the players at LIV are quite happy and maybe they did miss their window of opportunity? And speaking of which, we're only seeing LIV grow even more because we're now hearing reports of a potential 14th team being added to LIV. Contrast that on the other side, where we now see the PGA Tour shrinking. A lot of guys lost their tour cards just last weekend. And don't forget, we're going to see even less tour cards as we head into 2026. So the PGA Tour is shrinking. LIV is potentially growing. What is going on here? There's a lot that we got to dig into. But first, of course, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, the holidays are here. There's no better gift than Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X golf balls. And with the personalization options, you can customize your golf balls with certain sayings, even a lucky number. It makes the perfect gift. And no matter whether you choose the Pro V1, which is a great combination of speed, spin, and feel, also offers a exceptionally long mid-flight trajectory with maximum short game spin, or the Pro V1X, which has all of that great stop and drop technology, as well as a little bit of a higher flight. No matter which you choose, you're going to be getting a gift that you know the golfer in your life is going to love. So head over to Titleist today, check them out, maybe even pick a few dozen up for yourself. Like I said, check out those customization options. A lot of great stuff out there. Make sure to check them out. So, Mike, first and foremost, we're going to talk about where these quotes are coming from and read some of them. But on first hearing about it, how much do you think that this is potentially truth versus how much do you think that this might be a publicity stunt? I hate to call it that, but it could very well be like, hey, if you start telling everybody, yeah, everybody's interested in us, is it a publicity stunt?
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. I thought about that originally, but I just think that now that we're so far down the road with LIV, where a lot of people thought that it might flop out of the gate, especially some of these players that were offered big bonuses, maybe now all of a sudden they see, hey, this thing's around. It's around for its fourth year now. There's more teams potentially coming. Hey, guys, knock back on the door. Is that offer still available?
Right.
So I think it's more truth than a publicity stunt.
Exactly. And now don't forget where we're at. LIV doesn't necessarily need to throw around the cash that it once did.
No.
We talked before about, and some of the ideas, we got into this in other episodes talking about, as a potential merger moves closer, some of the tour guys saying they wanted to see players who left, if they wanted to come back, have to give that money back.
Yep.
And then you heard players on LIV, guys like Dustin Johnson, in a way, I can't argue with this logic where they're saying, we assumed all the risk because we were the first guys to go. We were the guys who, don't forget, like the environment was very different when the first couple guys went.
Yep.
And there was things in question like, what is this going to mean for your name, your career, your family, your potential Hall of Fame, whatever it may be. Excuse me. There is a lot of risk, and with that came a lot of money. But we'll dig into that more in a second. Let me first bring everybody up to speed and talk about these exact quotes and where they come from. So this story was first broke by Sports Illustrated. It's since been really making the rounds. I've seen it on a number of news sources this morning. It's been the big buzz. But this comes from a general manager on LIV Golf. Effectively, these guys have their work cut out for them right now because they have spots to fill. We're going to talk about some of those spots in a second. So effectively saying they're fielding a lot of calls with interest of people coming to LIV. However, this GM did speak on the condition of being anonymous, which I always kind of, maybe I don't put as much faith in when I see that.
Absolutely.
Like, why not? Why not say who you are if you're so sure of it? What's the state secret here? Maybe you're not going to say the names of people who reached out to you, but at least tell us who you are,
right? The
source, right? So you guys, again, I always love it. You guys are great in the comments. Weigh in with your own opinions. How much of this do you believe is true versus, again, publicity? But I got to at least give you the quote. So here's what he said. He said, two guys that had very big offers that are now calling would love to be on a LIV team, and said that it was the worst decision they made in not accepting their offer and coming over. So he's saying these are guys who were given offers. This is not just a couple of people who just have the idea that they want to join LIV. They were given offers.
Yep.
They denied the offers, and now they're calling that their worst decision.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. I'm just racking my brain. Who could this be? Names that jump off the page, like Jason Day, possibly.
But where Jason Day's career was, Jason Day's done an amazing turnaround, but where his career was at just 2 years ago, I don't know if he would have been one of the guys who got the big offer.
Right,
true. They're calling these high-profile names.
Zalatoris.
It makes me wonder, Zalatoris.
Daniel Berger's
who
back
got
in
the
the
big
spotlight.
names, but who got the real big offers? Justin Thomas.
They got the big ones.
Yep.
So you think it's someone super high echelon?
I think there's a possibility that at least one of those names is. I definitely think so. Especially, we'll talk about why in a second, why, like, really, in a lot of ways, like, there's got to be a lot of guys who are thinking, like, why not at this point take the offer?
Do you think it's anyone?
It's not the same conditions we were under years ago.
Right. I'm wondering if it's anyone that is possibly signed up for the TGL. Because think about the aftermath of that. If you leave and go to LIV, you're probably kicked out of TGL. Unless there's a deal.
But as of right now, TGL is a very much involved with the PGA Tour. It's a PGA Tour product in a lot of ways. Let me continue with these quotes. So he added, the same source said, My phone has been ringing nonstop basically since right before Dallas, and things are starting to happen from either players directly or agents calling and exploring and wanting to look at the possibility of coming on. So again, he's saying he's getting hit with a lot of agents. These are the GMs. Each team kind of runs its own show with who they bring in and stuff like that. According to the same source, it includes active interest from PGA Tour professionals and upcoming college stars about switching sides. Now, I thought this was interesting too. This was another thing. Now, remember, from a LIV standpoint, they're looking to build their product and teams are looking to build their teams. And the same GM noted that it's not just PGA Tour pros that they're after. He said, we watched the U.S. Amateur heavily this year. And I thought this was interesting. Like, you now have a world, undoubtedly, where when you reach that top level of amateur status, the top guys in college, the top guys playing in the U.S. Amateur, et cetera, very interestingly, they are in a possible world which we never experienced before. It was just such prior to this, it was such a kind of linear thing where you would just, finish up your career, decide when you wanted to go pro and start to work your way into the tour, whether that was Q School, whether that was Corn Ferry, whatever it may be, playing exemptions, Monday qualifiers, but that's where you were headed. There was no fork in the road. True. There is now a potential fork where there could be guys who are big names who could be recruited and could be looking at the tour, which we're going to talk about in a second, shrinking and becoming more and more difficult and no guaranteed money, to the possibility of $20 million. Let's just throw out a number that you could see being very feasible for LIV, being offered to join a LIV team.
No doubt. Even $5 million to an up-and-coming AM.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you think about it. I mean, you just kind of labeled it. It is very difficult to make it to the PGA Tour. I mean, we even have friends who are grinding it out.
And it's only going to get harder, which we'll tell you about in a second.
Exactly. Yep. So, I mean, yeah, if you dangle a carrot like that, I could see them being the kind of the preferred fork in the road.
Yeah.
Or so I don't know. It's gonna get interesting, and the college thing, the amateur thing, really does make it interesting. And I think you said before, man, there are guys who are going to be kicked out of LIV, relegated.
Yeah,
they're just not. They're not holding up their own. They're on the older Pat Perez. I think he just hung on. I think Bubba.
But I think therein, and we're going to talk about those spots opening up and why. But I think therein lies the issue that makes it not a cut and dry decision. Let's say you are. Put yourself in the shoes of being a top amateur right now and looking at those two different paths. If this deal never does happen and the stigma that lives a little bit on the PGA Tour side, the bans, suspensions, whatever you want to call it, continue to live on. If LIV is a place where which rightfully so in a lot of ways, it's a professional sport. If you don't perform, I think then there's no reason. It's not charity. You shouldn't be there.
Absolutely.
Right?
Like any other sport.
If you it's good to have a little bit of money in your pocket, take the payout, $5 million. I mean, I could happily live the rest of my life on $5 million, so I'm not going to sneeze at it. But you take that money If you don't perform, and in the first season or second season, you're now relegated out, you're right back to where you were before, which is either trying to qualify your way into LIV with its own kind of Q school system,
Yep.
or you're playing in Monday qualifiers, et cetera, for the PGA Tour, assuming
They let you.
they let you,
Right.
and you're not banned.
Yep.
So that's a risk. There's a risk involved. It's not like just like, hey, why not? Just if there's money on the table versus not money on the table, some people might say just take the money.
Take the money. Yep.
Right? The guaranteed money, but it's what's on the back end of that if you don't perform. So it's a very interesting thing. But where those spots are coming from, as you mentioned, was that there's been a bunch of guys who've been relegated out of the league because of performance, and some bigger names that we've seen tossed around. Bubba Watson, Brendan Grace. There's a couple others. Now, Bubba's not all the way out yet.
I know. Yeah.
He now has and I'll be interested to see how this plays out, but what I had heard was that he has the ability, because he's the captain, to make a business case to the team of why it's best to have him play. Mm-hmm. Now, I could see, though, Bubba, where he's at in his career, he could also take a back seat at this point. He could just be a captain, a non-playing captain. He's going to live very lucratively off of that team and how it performs. He's got an ownership stake in the team.
Right.
But it's very interesting. Golf has always been weird like that. There's always kind of these loopholes and ways to get in, whether that be a sponsor's exemption on the PGA Tour, or whether that be, this new thing of making a business case, whatever that means. But interesting. We'll see.
I mean, we'll see. And the whole thing of possibly going to 14 teams, like, I don't even know how they might do that. Isn't there a whole thing about all the players going off at once, shotgun? Like, if there's more players in the field, like, do they rotate? I just don't know.
Logistically, you're right.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you exactly where this comes from. So it was Sports Illustrated. Like I said, they're the first kind who broke the story. They're the ones who had spoken to this GM, this anonymous GM, about this. And this is where there's also this indication. He said, there is also the possibility of LIV adding a 14th team this offseason to accommodate more players who are looking to join the league.
That tells me they have 13 now, which is, it's a little more than 48. It's 4 more than 48. So you can't really have, everyone on a whole, right? Am I doing the math right? Logistically, it would change things.
It would definitely change things logistically.
But maybe there's a way that, put the teams aside, bringing more talent in, I think it's a smart play for them, like a range goats, Bubba's team. If you've got a team of 6 guys and you rotate your best 4 of the week, it's almost like any football team or any...
Right.
And then maybe the team gets compensated if the team wins, like a little back end. But the guys who played that day, if they won, they just get all the money to themselves. If they finish in first or whatever the case may be.
And that's why it's hard to say specifically. There's nothing that's hard and fast. Like LIV, they control the entire thing. Like they can do effectively whatever they want. Now I'm sure there's got to be some buy-in from the team owners of what happens, but it's nothing like that. What we've seen, which has been so difficult to get this deal done with the PGA Tour, where everybody has a little bit of a stake in it. Here, where they can adjust, and have we seen evidence of this? They've adjusted the league as they see fit to continue making it a better product. They treat it very much as a startup in that way. So maybe it is a world where you have, teams that sometimes a guy is benched that week or whatever it may be.
Yep.
But let's kind of contrast this. I want to talk about the other side of this, of how we're seeing where LIV is growing, possibly adding a 14th team, how the PGA Tour is shrinking, but also like come back and kind of speculate again. Do we really think that this is possible, and who these players might be? So let's do a break there. Let's do a quick word from our sponsor and come back and talk about it.
All right, FootJoy is the unquestioned leader in performance golf rainwear, and with their Hydro Series line of rain jackets, they are raising their rain game even higher. Now, if you guys have a golf trip booked, I know one of the things we do when we go on our golf trips, we're staring at the weather app. We're trying to make sure we have, great days for all of our rounds, but unfortunately, never really always works out that way. So you may have that one round where you're going to get poured on, whether it's a heavy rain or a light rain or a mist, even like wind, whatever the case may be. The temperature will change, so you're going to need options for that. So you got to go to footjoy.com, check out their Dry Joy Select, Hydro Light, Hydro Tour, and even the Hydro Knit. They've got something for every kind of weather. They are very smart, the folks over at FootJoy. They know what they're doing. Give them a look. Check it out. The whole entire lineup at footjoy.com.
All right, so we're going to talk about these big changes to the PGA Tour coming in 2026. Before we do, though, we mentioned this before. We got to do our own little bit of a speculation here. How much of this, though, ultimately, when it boils down to it, forget the little fringe stuff like adding another team and all that. This statement that there are two high-profile players who are knocking on the door to come over. Do you think it's true, and who do you think it might be? I mean, we started to kind of just touch on it earlier on in the show.
Yeah.
But, like I said, that I think that there's the feasibility of it, but there's something about it that just makes me feel like this might be a little bit of a stretch.
Excuse me. I think it's someone who's not, like I said, in DGL, which I think with Zalatoris is not.
Okay.
There's a guy who was trending pretty high 3-4 years ago. Then he got injured. So he's a guy who probably had a $50 million offer on the table, maybe. As far as anyone else, it's tough to tell. I don't know if it's someone who's maybe has fallen off. I'm not saying someone like a Kisner or someone like that, but maybe someone from the past, like you said, like 3-4 years ago who was really hot and now not so much.
Yeah.
Not a Joel Damon, not someone like that, but someone a little bit higher than that. It's just hard to speculate. I may not be Jason Day, but Zalatoris I can maybe
I'm going to
say.
tell you why I don't think it's Zally. I don't think it's Zalatoris specifically because he's in a position right now where we've heard him go on record, and you kind of see this in his personality, that majors are the most important thing for him. Here's a guy who's knocked on that door, very close to winning a major. And we said this before here on the podcast. He's one of those people who doesn't sit in that nice, cushy seat where you're exempt. I think where you got to look is the guys who have won a major in the last couple of years have an exemption status, because no matter what, that's still something that's going to be up in the air. Now, we've seen more and more. There's ways to qualify for LIV golfers to qualify into majors, with things like winning the Australian Open, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not quite as easy as getting in there easy, I say. But you know what I mean? For some of these top tier names who are able to get in on being in the top 50 based on official World Golf Rankings points. So I think if it's anybody, it's got to be someone who potentially has a major exemption and has that nice cushy buffer of a couple of years. And that might be whatever. And I do think that I would not be surprised in the slightest to see one more bigger, I'm talking top 20 type of name, go. But I don't think there's two. And unfortunately, I've heard this rumor before. It was only the end of last season where they were saying same thing. You heard agents and GMs saying their phone was ringing off the hook. We reported on it here on the podcast. No denying to me there's a little bit of, this seems like a really good moment of publicity to say, think about it, like you throw a party and you tell everybody, like, this is the way everyone wants to be here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's so much fun. We're having such a great time. Yeah. Everybody wants to be here because it drums up that interest.
It's definitely
so
good.
I think there's a certain degree that this was hammed up. But that being said, where I look at this, I look at the lens of players now seeing, like I said, being told over and over a deal's coming. The stigma is going away more and more. Majors are announcing seemingly constantly majors, and we saw this with the PGA Championship, the Ryder Cup on the U.S. side. Announcements being made that they're not going to be basically suspended from the idea just because they're on LIV. You're seeing that more and more. And on top of that, you're a PGA Tour player, and you're seeing your head honcho, Jay Monahan, seemingly best friends with Yasser and the PIF. He's like, all I see is them together now.
Yeah,
they're constantly together. To a certain extent, there's got to be some guys who are saying, I should make the jump if the opportunity comes to me. That being said, I think where we will really find out if this is true or not, we'll see if any moves are made, because I don't think there's anybody who be called these high-profile guys or guys who got big offers to start with who would be turned down at this point by LIV.
Yeah, right.
There's still way too many teams on LIV who would love nothing more than a top 25 player to be added. So if it doesn't happen, then we know we got to take these rumors a little bit less seriously.
I know.
When they say this. But you guys weigh in the comments. Let us know who you think it might be. But I really got to say, like, I'm trying to rack my mind. I feel like it had to be someone who's won a major in the last 5 years.
Okay. So definitely not the 2024 majors, because that was Scotty, Xander, and Bryson. Bryson's already there. You can't see Scotty and Xander going.
But then again, Xander.
Yeah.
I can't see Scotty going, but Colin Morikawa, Xander, because a guy like Xander, who's, I don't know, his name's been thrown around a lot of times.
Wyndham Clark.
Right.
I'm thinking, yeah. Guys who've won the majors in the last few years. Matt Fitzpatrick,
That's where I say, like, I believe that almost any of those names seem feasible. For me, the less feasibility is a guy like Zalatoris who is on that major hunt, and is not
hasn't
exempt,
secured it yet,
right? Because he could very quickly. I don't know where he is, especially with the injury. I don't know, and if you guys know, drop in the comments where he is right now in the official World Golf Rankings. But because of his time away from the game because of that injury, I would imagine he's got to work his way back up those official World Golf Rankings. He's the type of guy that one season away from the PGA Tour and official World Golf Rankings, he could very quickly drop out.
Yeah, true.
And all of a sudden, he's missing out on majors.
Yep.
So that's important. Now, let's talk about real quick about the PGA Tour shrinking and what we mean by that. So, this kind of, in a way, kind of slid under the radar a little bit. I think you're going to hear more and more talk about this as we get closer. Keep in mind, these changes come into effect in the 2026 season.
That's right.
But there was a number of things that were brought about by the PGA Tour that are going to apply. And really what it's going to do is it's going to dramatically shrink the PGA Tour. So among those changes for the 2026 season, you have first, only 100 players will keep their tour card with fully exempt status at the year's end, which is compared to the 125 that you have now. So 25 less players there. Second thing, tour cards are available for those graduating from the Korn Ferry Tour will decrease from 30 to 20. So 10 less spots there. Also, they said field sizes for many events will be reduced, and in some cases, including the Players' Championship, to 120 players. And here it said as outlined in the proposal, most fields will see at least 12 fewer players in each field in 2026. And also they mentioned a series of smaller adjustments to FedEx Cup points allegations and a reduction in spots available in tour fields through Monday qualifying. So you're going to see less guys who have fully exempt status, less Monday qualifiers, less guys coming from the Korn Ferry. It results in a smaller tour.
Makes LIV more attractive.
In a lot of ways.
For a rookie,
in a lot of ways it does, because it's saying the tour is going to be a place of kind of the same kind of names. Let me mention a couple of quick quotes on why they're saying, at least why they're saying this is. Mm-hmm. What the real reason is might be something different, but this comes from Tyler Dennis. He's the tour's chief competitions officer. He said, and of these changes, he said, these field size adjustments, which also promote a better flow of play, improve the chances of rounds being completed each day with a greater ability to make the 36-hole cut on schedule under normal weather conditions. He went on to say, for our fans, this certainly sets up weekend storylines much more effectively and will make the PGA Tour easier and more enjoyable to follow.
Yeah.
I think it goes. It actually, if anything, I think this change was driven largely by LIV, because remember, LIV was the one who came out the gate saying smaller fields, bigger names. You heard Phil Mickelson saying this, because if you buy a ticket, you kind of like you're going on Sunday, you want to be kind of guaranteed. This is where they had the no cuts to see the guy you came to see.
Right.
Where I worry about this change is it could mean a lot less Cinderella stories.
Okay.
Which I think is one of the beauties of the tour right now, especially in this kind of fall season where you have these incredible stories of guys who are.
Look at this guy Campos in Bermuda. He didn't even know when he won that he gets to go to the Masters. They told him in the scoring room.
Yeah.
He's like, you're kidding me.
That, or how many stories have we now seen where guys are like just on the brink of giving up?
Exactly.
Of packing it in, and they win.
Joel Damon.
I think Joel Damon.
This weekend.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I just have to wonder this, though. Who does that drive? Because it drives us as the more hardcore viewers. Mm-hmm. We like to see that.
Yep.
And it's interesting because we're following these kind of more fringe Cinderella storylines. I think where the tour's focus is starting to go is more towards the casual viewer because it's a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And I think where they might see a little bit of the other side of that to a Cinderella story is the casual viewers who have never heard a guy's name before. Like, who? Yeah. Who won on the PGA Tour? Mm-hmm. They want to make it smaller so you, even if nothing else, by less players, you create more household names because you're seeing the same guys over and over.
That's true. Yeah.
It seems like a business decision. I don't know. I don't quite buy this idea of it promotes a better flow, or like if the weather's bad, we're able to get it in because we have less guys.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's a tough one.
Yeah,
it's a
it is
tough
a tough one.
It's a toss for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. What I want to know is how do you become the chief competition officer for the PGA Tour?
Yeah, that's the first time I heard that title.
Never heard
that is
before.
literally the first time I had heard that title.
Yeah, crazy stuff. But no, you're right. I mean, Joel, that was such a great story, and you saw the level of support. There's a Cinderella story for you. Obviously, he got Netflix fame from the show, but there were so many people rallying behind him. The guy made a 6-foot putt on 18 to keep his job yesterday.
Right.
Crazy.
But what I guess I wonder is that storyline for us or for the casual viewer? And maybe it's just that we're not doing and I say we, I mean the tour in general, is not doing a better job of telling the stories that are unfolding, of filling people in on what's at stake here.
Yeah.
Because I feel like in a 10-second elevator pitch, you can kind of tell the viewer what's at stake and what this guy is playing for. And now I'm kind of hooked in and I'm roped in.
Right.
But what this is ultimately doing, at least if you look at it on paper, is it sure looks like a PGA Tour that's shrinking and a LIV Golf Tour that's growing and it's potentially expanding. And it just continues to make you wonder that where we will land on all of this. And we've said it before. We've said we're kind of speculating if there's a merger, maybe that there are more combined events.
Might be part of their overall plan here.
Right. And it may very well be, because with the tour kind of, the reasons they're saying are different than this, but if the real reasons that they're paring it down is so that they can do more combined events and you've got more spots for LIV guys, then, you know, maybe that's the hidden reason behind all of this.
Could be.
And maybe we're going to see 2 tours of one of, you know, roughly 100 players and one of roughly whatever it may be, wherever it lands with an extra team or so. And it's just basically the top 200 golfers in the world are split amongst 2 tours, effectively. I'm using round numbers, but you get what I'm saying? And they come together for majors and a few other events that are co-sanctioned.
It could be.
It could very well be. But again, just thought this headline grabber, you know, kind of making the news cycle today of these 2 big players just immediately caught my eye, caught my attention, just thinking like, okay, who could it be and could it even be real? And I think there's a lot of different ways. We just have to wait and see. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. As we see it, we'll continue to unfold it and report it here. And like I said, let us know in the comments what you believe to be true with this. Is it something that is hype? Is it something that's a PR stunt? Or are there some players who potentially rightfully so are feeling like they missed the boat and now they want in? So let us know in the comments, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.